Talking about Agentic over here, and I agree with you. The use cases that can make to production 10 billion in the scale and 500 use cases. And that was my point, right? If you really look under the carpet, it looks fascinating, a very costly fascination. But when it comes to M for money, R for ROI, then it's an extraordinary gap that only big techs can afford right now.
Agentic AI, to be honest, doesn't necessarily require generative AI. This is an unpopular idea, right? Agentic AI requires reasoning engine. It needs to reason. It doesn't care if it reasons with LLM, if it reasons with a deterministic model, if it reasons with if, then, this, that. That doesn't change the notion of agency.
In India, there are 784 languages spoken, right? 22 languages as per the constitution. Those UPI apps, they started with English only. Then they added Hindi. Still, they have not added all the 22 languages. It's difficult because our journey into our portal, or our entry point towards this digital world was through those apps.
Partnership with Tech Tuesdays. My name is Faisal Zair. I'm here from the GSMA Foundry. Just by show of hands, who knows what the GSMA is? Okay, majority of the people from GSMA put their hands up as well. So the GSMA is an industry association. Essentially what it means is we operate on the interests of the mobile network operators across the globe. So if you think every mobile network carrier, they need to work on things like interconnect, roaming, handover, all of these sorts of key important topics of how we use our phones these days. But it's not just about phones anymore, because increasingly the devices that we use are changing. It's IoT, it's vehicles, it's drones, it's satellites, it's apps. The way in which we communicate, the way in which we connect to one another is changing, and that's where the GSMA comes in. We bring together mobile network operators, we bring together the tech ecosystem, we work with governments, we work across the whole of the world with our 800 members and 400 adjacent ecosystem partners. Now, as part of that work, we're doing some work here with Tech Tuesdays to share some of the latest and greatest news around some of the important topics that hit our industry. In the GSMA Foundry, we focus on frontier tech topics like AI, non-terrestrial networks, quantum, satellites, and these sorts of topics, because change and disruption is happening faster than ever. We were just talking about it today. How do you keep up with the pace of change when a year ago we were talking about Agentic just coming out, and then now we're talking about it, in such a different way? I kind of look at it from a perspective of it's not going to slow down. It's only going to increase. It's only going to get more and more crazy. And part of the work that we're doing with Tech Tuesdays is how can we share some of the stories from the leading lights of the industry by bringing great speakers to share their voices, their insights, their expertise with you all. So with that being said, I'm going to hand over to Subhash to say a few words, and then I think we're going to get started for today's session. Cool. Welcome.
Thanks, Faisal. Thanks, Ahmad. And thanks to the entire GSMA Innovation Foundry out here for hosting us. So yes, hello everyone. Warm welcome to the 45th episode of Tech Tuesday UK. I'm Subhash Aghosh, the founder of Tech Tuesday UK. Before we begin, a couple of quick housekeeping notes. In case of emergency, God forbid, straight walk around the door and the main door and go down. Okay? Don't wait to take Instagram post. And of course, kindly ensure your full wide phone is at silent mode at all times. Of course, Tech Tuesday, now each one of you are part of a vibrant and growing community, a space where ideas are exchanged freely and innovation is sparked through open and honest dialogue. For those who are joining us for the first time, Tech Tuesday UK is built on a simple but very powerful idea to create a space for unscripted, free-flowing conversations around disruptive technologies that have the potential to impact a billion lives. We meet on the first Tuesday every month, and on the remaining Tuesdays, we host Tech Tuesday Extra sessions and followed by mixed sessions where we have collaborated with GSMA Innovation Foundry. Each session runs for about 90 odd minutes, sometimes stretches to 120 minutes as well, so don't think of running to catch a trend. But what makes this platform truly unique is there are no script, no predefined questions, no constraints, just real, meaningful conversations. We're still in startup space, and as we grow, we truly rely on your support. If today's session resonates with you, we would really appreciate your help in amplifying our message in terms of share your takeaways, talk about us, repost our content. You can find us across all platforms, mostly LinkedIn, X, Insta, with the same hashtag, which is at techtuesdaysUK. As is the tradition, our wonderful team of volunteers will connect with some of you after the session to capture your thoughts on camera. So don't be shy. We would love to hear your experience today. Now, let's do what we have come here to do. Let's challenge assumptions, ask bold questions, and together shape the future of innovation. Coming on to today's topic, which is Agentic AI, which is a shift from AI as a tool to AI as an autonomous collaborator. It's not just about automation, it's about autonomy. And the real question is not whether business will accept it or adopt it, but how fast they can adopt to it. To explore this and more, we are privileged to be joined by an outstanding panel. Let me take the pleasure of inviting Dr. Megan Crawford from Edinburgh Napier University. Megan, please take your seat. We have Dr. Mohsen Amribersili from HCL Tech.
Thank you.
Mohsen. And of course, last but not the least, our dear friend Gautam Hazari from XConnect. Thank you once again for joining us. And before we begin, a small request. When you speak, please introduce yourself, your name, and your organization, so we can continue building this incredible community together. Welcome once again. Let the conversation begin. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe we can start with the introduction, Megan.
My name's Megan Crawford. I am an assistant professor, at Edinburgh Napier University. I am the principal investigator of the Futures and Analytics Research Hub, which I started during COVID. And I am a research lead with this research center, the newest research center in the business schools, the Center for Business and Innovation and Sustainable Solutions, so CBIS for short, if you prefer. And I'm director of a brand new limited company, Shearwater Foresight. So with me and my colleagues, right now I am working through a UKRI fellowship to investigate exactly how different forms of AI, or rather using different forms of AI, affect the way we choose to use our own minds. And so that hopefully will produce a bunch of evidence in a couple years.
I need to check with my ChatGPT to see how this impacted my mind. So my name is Mohsen. I'm Director of AI Advisory and Consultancy in HCL Tech. I've been doing AI stuff since 2010. I've stayed in academia for many years. I have a PhD in machine learning, which is not at all what we call AI today. It's predictive models. And I'm very happy to be here and talk a little bit about what we are seeing that is happening in the world and share some stuff with you guys. Yeah.
Thanks, Mohsen. And I'm Gautam Hazari. I'm the Chief Product and Innovation Officer for XConnect. I was a co-founder and CTO for a company called Secura ID. AI, I think yesterday we were just chatting. I was actually trying to remember when I used AI first. It was actually in 1999 when I used AI. It was very different AI. And what I was trying to do at that time was extracting out meaningful information from legal document, handwritten legal document, and populate a database. And I don't think I have any shame in saying I failed miserably at that time, right? But learned a lot. The frameworks that we were using, or I was trying to use at that time, they don't even exist. You may not even have heard about it. One was called OmniMark, which has disappeared completely. The other one was Prolog, which survived for some time, but then disappeared, right? Then what we call the AI winter, that started. Then I was actually part of GSMA previously. And my last project in GSMA was, at that time, this was pre-ChatGPT. And we were calling it NLP at that time. It was to create a language bridge between patent and telecom standard, 3GPP. Right now I'm an AI practitioner and very happy to be here to continue the discussion. I'll stress the word continue because almost a year back in May, we had a similar topic, not the similar, exact same topic, Agentic AI. So I think it will be great to see in that less than a year where we have come, right? I think it was in May, I believe. Megan was there as well with another panel. So yeah, so that's where we are. So let's start the discussion. How do you want to start? And again, many of you have been coming here regularly anyway. As Subhash said, nothing is scripted. We didn't even discuss what we are going to talk about. Earlier, we were just having some basic chat, right? So that makes it more interesting. So let's talk. I was thinking maybe we can start from where it was, and then we can talk about.
Yeah, that's exactly. I think it'll be great to start. How it has been evolved. I mean, from when you started thinking about it or discussing it to what we are watching it today, what we are witnessing today.
I'll say one small thing about that. Nobody was able to define what agentic AI was in a general sense, or an agent, an AI agent, a year ago. We spoke about our parts, but like as a general public, people didn't understand it. And now you hear people who don't even use it or have any consideration for it. They have a functioning knowledge-ish of what an AI agent is, and I think that speaks volumes for how much the message has been just across all communication channels.
So I kind of disagree. I think agentic AI, and I agree with the sentiment, but I think the definition has always been there. First time I've heard agentic AI was 2006. There's a book called, this is like the Bible of AI for, still some universities are teaching it, Russell Norwick, the introduction to AI kind of book. And there's a chapter talking about agentic AI. I think agency was always a goal, right? For many, many AI models, we always, and if you look at what Russell defines as agent back then, still same thing, right? Like a thing that can look at the environment, learn something from environment, change the environment, all those kind of aspirations, right? The problem was the constraint. We never had any model that could actually, depends on the world, right? If you run a tiny model that lives in the two-dimensional world, that is just these tiny things and sees them, and it's like a Pac-Man, right? Like there's 4 things, we could do it. But for anything meaningful, I guess we never had any model that could fathom the complexities of, for example, human language, or do anything as interesting as we can do today. So agentic AI was a thing. I think it was a very interesting, there were communities trying to use it, but with ChatGPT and with GPT, probably GPT-2, came the opportunity to actually build something. And now we are in the situation that people are building stuff and changing stuff, at least for certain types of work. We have agents, right? And maybe with this, as it is.
Yeah. So I was thinking I'll go back even further, right? But before that, I'll agree and disagree at the same time, right? I would agree that it has been there for quite some time. The first time I heard about the term agent was not even in computer science or in AI. It was in a book of psychology. I think I read it in 2000. It was a book from 1986 by Albert Bandura. That was the first time, and I remember Andrew Young actually referenced that book when he, there was a talk he did at Stanford where he introduced this term, Agentic AI, and he referenced that book. I read that book in around 2000. And then whatever the concept of agency and agent Albert Bandura talked about in the book in 1986, that's exactly what we are referencing now, right? And also maybe we should talk about, you started to talk about the models. I think the agents are way beyond models. Maybe we will explore that, but as you know, you rightly said the context that let's go back, right? So I was thinking, let's go back, because agents, or even models, or even AI, right? They're not an isolated thing. There are other things as well that has been happening around. AI is not. AI has been there, right? I think this is something that I was talking about in one of the other panel as well, but I'll say that again, right? The way I see that and then hopefully you will agree that at least the digital world has been revolving around 3 A's: apps, APIs, and AI. You pick any digital service in the consumer space, enterprise space, you will find that that's what is happening, right? And just out of curiosity, of these 3 A's, which one do you think is the oldest one? Which one is the newest one?
I think API should be the oldest one.
The oldest one, yeah. And the newest one?
AI, of course.
Okay. It's actually not. AI is the oldest one.
Oh, is it?
And apps are the newest one, right? AI is not new. We were talking, before we started to talk here. AI is, when we say old, is extremely old, right? The term AI was coined in a very small workshop in Dartmouth College, because few, researchers and professors, somehow they didn't want to go home during summer, and they wanted to spend time. So that's the famous Dartmouth workshop, it's called. That was in 1956, when the term AI was coined. The first neural network was created even before that. So it was in 1951 by Marvin Minsky. You may have heard his name. He's kind of one of the godfathers of AI, right? And I have seen the model of that neural network, one of the neurons, because at that time, digital was not a thing. I have seen it. One of the neurons is this big and made of all bulbs, those cathode ray bulbs and so on, right? But AI is even earlier than that. You may know that all these AI revolution that we see now, ChatGPT is based on GPT, right? GPT is based on Transformer. Transformer is a deep learning model which uses, for deep learning model, and again, we don't need to worry about the technical things, but deep learning model got accelerated through an algorithm called backpropagation, which was popularized by Sir Jeffrey Hunter. But backpropagation was not invented by him. Backpropagation actually is a realization or encoding of a rule in calculus called chain rule. Chain rule in calculus was presented to the world by Leibniz in 1676. So all the mathematics that we are using, the basis of that is that old. So AI is very, very old, right? AI has seen winters, as we were talking about, right? Apps are the newest one. The first app, if I can remember correctly, it was in 1980s. All those PDAs, where calculators, etc. were there. Then came the Nokia Snake application, if any of you can remember, right? APIs also are in between. So the first time the APIs were introduced was in 1940. Anyways, so the world has been revolving around these three. If you take any application, you will see the use of this. AI was very different. I think you were calling it predictive AI. AI has taken a big journey. AI has been predictive AI for very long. You pick any, I think I was using an example earlier about Uber. Let's pick Uber, right? That's an app. You start with the first app, newest one. What do? You enter. You want to go from your place to your friend's place. You enter your friend's address. What Uber as a service needs to do, they need to figure out what is the route from your place or wherever you are to your friend's place, right? It needs mapping as a service. Can Uber do mapping? Yes, they can. Will they do? Why? That's not their service. They will look for other services who can actually provide mapping. Google Maps, that's exactly what Uber does. So Uber basically then uses the mapping service from Google Maps. How do they do? Through an API, through the Google Maps API, the second day. Then they need to tell you that what is the price or cost, right? Including that strange, what do we call that? Search pricing, right? Then they will use AI, not the AI that we see these days is the predictive AI. And then they will give you the service, right? That's how it has been. You pick any other service, Salesforce service, any of the enterprise application, that's how it works, right? That was the case even, I would say, 2-3 years back, at least 2 years back. But now that experience is changing, and that's exciting. There is this fourth A that has come up, which is Agentic AI, and it's changing, challenging, converging all those three A's into one. How? We will discuss. Sorry, that's how I have been seeing, or that's an observation, that that's how the world has been moving on. But these fourth A, the AI agents, Agentic AI, that's kind of diminishing or diluting all the three A's. You don't need any of the other three A's, or at least you don't need in the same form, right? In 2023, during the CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, 2023, in January, there were two devices they were launched. One was called AI Pin, AI Human Pin, that was designed by the same guy who designed iPhone. He left Apple and designed it. This didn't work that well because of commercialism, not because of the product. The second one was called Rabbit R1. I pre-ordered it as soon as it was announced. I have used it, and I can, share the experience why I'm saying it is converging on. So in that device, it's a bit of an ugly device. It's an orange square. You don't want to show it to anyone, but it works, right? There is no app in there. If I now need to order an Uber, there is no app. All I do is I talk to it. I say, hey, can you book an Uber? That's it. Then it asks back, okay, I can book an Uber. Where do you want to go? Then I say, I want to go to my friend's place. Which friend is it? Then I say, my friend's name is Ashok. Then there are two Ashoks there. Do you want the first one or the second one? I say the second one. Then I say, that's it. So now there is no app. There is an API, but it's a different form. We will come to that later. And the AI here is very different AI. This is the transformation that has happened. And that device, the Rabbit R1, is what Agentic AI and the agent is promising, is some form of agent in a device. It doesn't have to be in there, right? That's the transformation that we have seen, right? So the AI transformed from predictive AI to generative AI. Maybe we should talk about a bit on generative AI. You started to talk about the models, then the Agentic AI, because that generative AI fueled the experience that we are seeing in Agentic AI.
Fantastic. Please.
No, go ahead.
So I think I completely agree with the story and narrative. I think to me, generative AI is just a thing, a model that generates stuff, right? Like many people have probably gone through the idea of LLMs, and I'm not going to talk about LLMs and layers and transformers. Agentic AI, to be honest, doesn't necessarily require generative AI. I think this is an unpopular idea, right? Agentic AI requires reasoning engine. It needs to reason. It doesn't care if it reasons with LLM, if it reasons with a deterministic model, if it reasons with if, then, this, that. That doesn't change the notion of agency, because agency doesn't need to come from one type of model. There are a couple of tools. I'll talk about all of them very, very quickly, maybe just as a categorization. Number one, we said that, at least from my point of view, any model that is out, any agentic AI that is out there requires a reasoning engine. Reasoning engines today are mostly transformer-based LLMs, which is very good. There are other things that are growing. That's very good. Again, the second thing that they need is tool, meaning they need to have hands. They need to, if you want to be an agent, if you want to be an agent system, agentic system, you need to have access to tools. And these tools can be APIs, can be MCP, whatever is the standardized way, but they need to change the environment, right? Like the tool part. In my head, agentic AI also needs guardrail. Sorry, I'm converting your very beautiful academic and true story to very enterprise one. But guardrail, like any agentic system, requires constraint. If there are no constraints, it could be very weird thing to have. OpenClaw is an example. You've all seen it. Things can happen. Interesting, very interesting concept, but requires constraint. And in addition to all these things that we talk about, the guardrail, the tooling, the reasoning, they need to also have probably some sort of framework. We need to define like things like skills, the newer things that are all around it. And there's another word that people keep using, which I think this is the core reason that the whole thing exists, which is orchestration. Meaning that if it's an agent, it needs to have a loop. The reason that generative AI initially, when it was consumed through ChatGPT, wasn't agentic, was because it did not have a loop. It was waiting for you to say something, then it was saying something back to you, and then based on that, you were saying something else. So most agentic things will constantly check something on their own, make some decisions using reasoning, change some stuff, check to see what they've changed, what is the reaction, and maybe do something else. So this is a very non-exciting way of describing agents to me. And I understand that it doesn't look like it. It looks a lot more magical when you use these tools. It looks like they're actually doing something very interesting, but there are a bunch of engineering stuff that are working and using reasoning. And on this thing has now opened unlimited number of use cases. So that's the interesting part to me, right? In enterprises, like things like claim processing for insurance, things like I want to generate like finance analysis. All those things are now becoming agentic, which is fantastic. We need to consider one thing here. I'll say this and I'll pause because this was a very long rant, I realize, is that a lot of these loops and the orchestration still heavily requires human in the loop. And not just because these things cannot reason. They can reason. Trust me, I cannot reason as well as Opus 4.6. I don't know, I'm not that sharp, right? But I think you still need human to make the final decision because you need somebody to be liable, right? Like whenever I'm working with a pharma company, right? The key reason that we have human in the loop in most of these agentic loops is there need to be a human that signed it off. Otherwise, what are you going to do if the decision was wrong? Fire the model? Like what does that even mean? Shift, delete the file? Like, so it's a very interesting time. And with this, I'll move it back to the panel. And of course, on the LLM front and the generative AI front, I can talk quite a bit, but this, to me, the interesting part is in a very reductionist way, creating a model that can guess the next word. We somehow manage to model human thinking, and that's the magical part. I can describe Transformer as a model, but I definitely don't know why it works, to be honest, right? Like, why is it that by guessing the next word we can imitate humans? That's the question. Yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm going to take it only slightly more academic, and I'm going to take it back even farther. But this is just to start posing a series of questions about the language we're using to describe all this. So I hope I can keep it all in mind because you ended with a really good one, but I want to go back to start. So Daniel Dennett, going to the book you talked about in the 80s, who was that again?
Albert Bandura.
Bandura, yes. So Bandura was building from what the philosophers, the continental philosophers were saying throughout, from Minsk, well, pre-Minsk. So Wittgenstein was talking about this stuff too. And one of the biggest arguments, and I do not and will not have an answer to this, is the point. We can't answer it. And if you think you can't answer it, you're wrong already through hubris. That's it. But that's okay, because we need to try to argue this out. And it's, what is agency? Because if we can define agency, then we can understand what has agency and what doesn't. And at this point, PS, cutting to the end of the test, we can't define cognition yet. We have a lot of pieces we can identify. We can have a lot of language for it, but a lot of the language for cognition is actually from neuroscience. We're borrowing words of physicality to explain something that we don't even know if it is or is not physical. So this is where a lot of debates start coming in. So agency, what Dennett wrote this really great, or edited this really great book and added to it, is in the 90s. And no, I can't remember the name, but it's something like The History of AI or AI and Cognition or something like that. And it came out in 1993 or 1996. But like, we're going back to World War II time. We're going, like I said, because Wittgenstein, just to borrow him, he had his early work and his later work. And his later work was really fascinating because he said, forget literally everything I said in my earlier work. I grew up a bit. And in that, there's this idea, and Minsk was arguing this as well. And there was the other, I'm trying to remember who the guys were who built the other AI model. There was a physical model, and then there was a symbolic relation model. And it was a really... You know what, let's just go with it. But one of them won out, and that's the one we're using today. And they were like, you can only have agency if, amongst the many things, many qualities, qualifiers you have to meet, is that you have autonomy, obviously. And well, we say obviously, it's not that obvious when we start getting into the world of describing AI. And autonomy comes with this whole world of like intermotivation to think and create. And one of the arguments is we can only do that if we already have the capacity to hold symbolic understandings of concepts, and then things fill in. And a really good example is when you get like first year philosophy students say, well, what is a chair? Describe a chair. And when you get down to it, literally everything on the planet is a chair, including another human, because when you go by definition, you start finding the messiness of trying to define something that you've only understood conceptually. So this is what we're trying to do when we're describing artificial intelligence or agency and intelligent agents. You can be an agent by just fulfilling certain agency tasks. I remember the Palm Pilot, when it came out, that was the 90s, was it?
80s.
Yeah, and 80s. Okay, and the commercials where you have a personal agent in your hand or something like that. But it didn't have agency. It was just a nice service tool. And I think, and that was where they were going with their arguments. The second level of that agency and autonomy argument was that every single tool we have on the planet in all of history, we created to serve us. We didn't create a single tool to not serve us. So these tools, if we think of AI as a tool, technology is just another category of tools. It can only be there to serve us. Therefore, it cannot be us. I mean, the only time we create anything that doesn't serve us are other humans. We don't create them to serve us. That is a completely separate, biological, evolutionary, however you want to look at it, spiritual system, right? So that's where the arguments are. That's where the argument is. Can you create a tool that then no longer serves you, but then outperforms you? Like, we've never done that before. It's never happened. And I'm not going to get reductive with it and say, well, yeah, a car can run you over. That's not the same thing. Accidents aren't the same thing as autonomously forward-moving agency. And so I really think that's my thing. Let's think about the language whenever we use it too, because AI is not thinking. The reasoning machines are really interesting on that one too, with using that terminology, because to reason is to have agency and autonomy. So anyway, that's where we're going with this. I'll stop there at the philosophical part. Pass it back.
Yeah, so I'll again come back to the journey, right? Where the reason I was actually mentioning that generative AI played a role and then opened up the door for agents. You nicely were, portraying that not just the models. When we talk about the models, it's not just the large language models, reasoning model, there are action models, other sorts of models. The models are the, their core, but not just enough. But there is something that happened triggered by generative AI that opened the door, right? Because I was talking about these 3 A's revolving, the world was revolving. There is another way to look into how the digital world and our organic world was revolving around two paradoxes. I talked about it earlier as well in one of the paradoxes. One is a Moravec's paradox, the other one is Polanyi's paradox, right? So Moravec's paradox is there are things which are difficult for us humans but easy for machines, computers basically. And there are things which are easy for us humans and difficult for machines, right? If there is a 203 digit number and we have to calculate the cube root, tertiary root of that number, is difficult for me as human, right? For the computer, even the calculator can do it. So it's easy, right? But there are things which are difficult. Very easy for us humans, has been there for millions of years, not millions, thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, but difficult for machines, and that's language. Language has been something, I have been playing with NLP, you have been playing with NLP. It has been extremely hard because language, and we were just talking before, coming down here, that language has got, it's not just words, right? Language has got lots of ambiguity, language has got emotions associated with it. There is a popular example always been taken for language to show the complexity of that, right? So let's take a simple statement. The ball didn't fit the bag because it was small. What was small? You don't even think you said the bag was small. Just change one word. The bag didn't fit the bag because it was large. What was large? Immediately you will say ball. Before the reasoning model was there, the large language model, I tried this. It was extremely hard. You cannot apply rules there, right? Grammar, language, these are not rules. There is so much, thinking, reasoning that goes behind knowledge of space, knowledge of, context, etc. It has always been hard for computers. That's what generative AI has changed. These language models just destroyed the bridge between our language and the language that the machines can understand, right? So, and that was significant because it has never ever happened before that. There were many tries. I myself have tried in NLP using all sorts of weird encoders and embedding models. Didn't succeed. But now, no one even thinks, right? You just use ChatGPT and just assumes that it's your friend. It understands everything that you say, right? So that created that start of the journey. But then that was not enough. Very quickly we went into this agentic systems where there is agency, and it's very hard, as Megan you were trying to describe, it's very hard to define agency, right? You will always get something that doesn't fit there, right? But as Mohsin, you were explaining, I actually summarize the agents with 5 M's. First one is the models. Language model, reasoning model, action model. The second one is multi-stage planning. That's the loop you were talking about. And that's where the agency part starts to come in. These things, if you can call them things, agents, they plan themselves. And it's multi-stage, which means the different stages are planned by themselves. Third one is very important, is memory. It's not just short-term memory. It's episodic memory, short-term memory, long-term memory. Without that, agency is very, very difficult. Even reasoning is difficult. If you start to think, it happens to us as well, right? You start to think on some direction and you forgot where you started, then you don't know where to go towards. So that's memory. And then the fourth one, you talked about tools. I say it's the fourth M, which is machine usage or tools usage. That's critical. Tools usage made us humans, right? Differentiated from our Homo erectus or even chimpanzees. Without tools usage, we would not have reached here. Now we use lots of digital tools. So these agents needs to use tools as well. And the fifth one, you touched upon, and that's the most critical one. That's the fifth M. I say that's mindfulness. There needs to be, mindfulness is humanness, right? There needs to be there without compromise, and that's the hardest thing. And I am seeing some lights there. In the last 3 months, I could see some of the agentic frameworks are actually doing it, and that needs to happen intentionally. Not like, talk about, oh, there is a policy or the regulator will figure it out, or, there will be a law. Oh, why do we need to care about it? Let's just do it. It will happen. Or let's make profit now. We'll figure out all those things later. Guardrails is, from practical purposes, it's nothing more than few words, right? But I have started to see, maybe we should talk about those a bit, right? So, how many of you have heard about OpenClaw? Okay, quite a few, right? In the last 3 months, so OpenClaw is something that's very, very new. OpenClaw is probably one of the accidental agentic framework. Accidental because it was made for a different purpose and it's used for a bit. And then that changed probably how things will move and how things are moving right now. There was this Austrian developer who created in last year, actually. Last year I looked, then it was not called OpenClaw. If I remember correctly. Claudebot, exactly. It was called Claudebot in November. And this guy wrote it in half an hour or 1 hour, right? Because it was very simplistic. I looked into it in GitHub. All it had was a WhatsApp interface on top of Anthropic code. That's all. So basically you fire off some WhatsApp messages. So instead of, if you know Anthropic code is basically a framework where you say what you want and it generates code, right? So the first one, the Claudebot, was exactly that. Instead of typing, you have a WhatsApp interface, and there was a WhatsApp translator. It was translating whatever you have written in WhatsApp into Anthropic code, and it was generating stuff. That's all it was. But then in February 2026, some significant thing happened, completely out of accident. This guy, Peter Steinberger, he was in Marrakesh, and he talked about it. If you have not listened to, if you know Lex Fridman, so in Lex Fridman's podcast, I think a few weeks back, 3 or 4 weeks back, and he extended the podcast to 3 hours. It's a 3 hours podcast, right, where Peter Steinberger was talking about the story. And the story goes this way. He was holidaying in Marrakesh. And in Marrakesh, the internet signal, the mobile signal was quite weak. So he had this Claudebot thing. And by the way, the Claudebot term he had to change to Moldbot because Anthropic basically said copyright thing because Claude is from Anthropic, right? So he changed it to Moldbot. And that's interesting because he kept, so Claudebot, he used the symbol of a lobster for a reason, right? Because lobster, or maybe there is no reason, there's stories he made after that. So molting is the process where these lobsters, they actually shed their shell, and this is how they grow. So he thought that the agents need to grow by shedding stuff, by learning, relearning, not learning, forgetting, and that's how you grow, right? That's why he used the word moltbot. Anyways, so when he was in Marrakesh, he wanted to use this this framework basically, and basically what he did was he sent a voice message there. As you know, in WhatsApp you can record a voice. And then he realized he has not built the voice framework in there. But he saw that, in WhatsApp, if the other person is typing, you see typing. So he saw that the agent is typing. He said, what is it typing? Because I have not built it. Maybe it will say, sorry, I can't do. You have not built it there, right? But then it got the response. Maybe he was asking for some restaurant in there or something he was searching. So, how did you build it? Sorry, how did it happen? Because I have not built it there. So what happened was, then it explained what it did, right? So when the binary arrived, and it is in his computer, when the binary arrived in his computer, the agent there, the OpenClaw or Moldbot at that time, basically figured out that this is a binary, and it read the initial, let's say, metadata. It said that it's an audio binary. Then it used an open source framework called FFmpeg to decode it. Then it said, still I don't understand. I have decoded, I don't understand what does this mean, because I understand text only, right? Then it searched the web. It saw that, okay, there is a framework called Whisper. This is from OpenAI, right? That can do that. Then it thought, I can download it. But then it thought that, why do I download it? There is another option of using it through APIs. So it thought that, let me use the OpenAI API to use Whisper, which can translate from audio to text. But to use Whisper, it needed an API key from OpenAI. So it searched Peter's laptop, found an API key somewhere stored in Google Drive, picked the API key, fired off Whisper, translated from audio to text, and solved it. So it evolved itself, right? And that's what agency is. That has started to happen from OpenClaw, and then it became an internet phenomena. And I think last week I was checking in GitHub, the repo for, and it's open source, completely open source. It had, if I remember correctly, around 356,000 GitHub stars. If you know GitHub, 356,000 stars is superstar. And that's the 6th most popular repository ever. I have not seen any repository that has gone. So that's where it is moving, and this is only from February, right? I think you were talking about something around OpenClaw as well, if you want to add.
No, I think, to me, first of all, I forgot to talk about memory when I was talking about agents, which is very weird, because memory is probably the most important part of the agentic framework, and as you said, there are many different types of memory. OpenClaw is very interesting, and I think it opened up a couple of things. First, as you said, it is relatively simple. The code is not very complex, but it's very quickly becoming this operating system that everybody is building similar things to that. And I guess memory has a big role to it, because it has very good way of storing different sessions and learning about you. And then there's different skills that it adds to itself. So it opens the door to different things. And as you know now, OpenAI has not bought the project because it's open source project, but Peter is now working with OpenAI, meaning that they are going to bring it to the frontier models. And what I expect from here is that this will become the way that we do a lot of agentic solutions, even for enterprise. Memory, I'll talk about memory and then I go back to this. For an enterprise, the biggest issue is always around what is our corporate memory, right? And if you want to build this OpenClaw-like thing that learns, let's say GSMA, right? There's people doing stuff, negotiating with different operators, talking about standard. Maybe you're planning for Barcelona, the event. There is something about this that people know and incrementally add to each other. There are things that they correct. Maybe last year you could do this in Shanghai in this particular location. This year you cannot do it, right? Like, where does that information sit? So after OpenClaw, very interestingly, after Peter joined OpenAI started talking about frontier. And in frontier, the biggest thing that they're talking about is building this corporate context, which I know it's not as fancy as like the science behind memory or context, but what they mean is we need to collect the information, we need to learn, we need to forget, we need to build. The issue with all these operating systems seems to be, and OpenClaw, Frontier, I could even say co-work from Anthropics, is that at the moment they are not centrally managed. Your OpenClaw will be tuned to you, which causes all sorts of issues, by the way. If you're an email provider or Google, or some sort of API provider, your OpenClaw uses your single license and do stuff that probably wasn't designed to do. You're not buying the enterprise one, right? You cannot centrally control them. Because they're evolving, they might evolve to something kind of, something that's CISO's nightmare, right? Like you have a piece of code that can become something else, right? Eventually through learning. And imagine if you have Mythos or better model and it can exploit stuff. The way that I set up my OpenClaw, and I have OpenClaw on my Mac Mini, is because I couldn't read the whole documentation is a mess. It's an open source project, and I'm not a good developer. So what I've done is I connected it to Cloud Code. As Cloud Code, I was like, this is the source code. Let's setting up this thing. And in the process, I realized that I completely changed my OpenClaw. My OpenClaw is very unique because I forced it out of its guardrail. OpenClaw normally doesn't let multiple people to talk with it, right? It pairs one. I just said, okay, Cloud Code, go change the code and enable my OpenClaw to start talking with everybody. You know what happened? He started sending message to my wife. She was like, Mohsen, you're here, somebody with your number sending messages to me, like, hi. He started talking with my friends, which was really weird. I realized that I broke that pairing code mechanism that it requires just because I was too lazy. It was setting to not go through the setting. So I think that's a bit of an issue with these kind of operating systems, right, or operating frameworks for agentic. I don't know where we are going from here, but the combination of very powerful models and chassis that they can evolve on their own seems very exciting, and also seems very nightmarish if you're a CISO kind of character in an enterprise and you're like, oh man, every machine now has its own capability of doing stuff, and anybody, even Mohsen, can ask from the Cloud Code to build a new interface or whatever the case. It's very exciting. I think AI agentic engineering in general is becoming something which is really, really amazing. But also, it is early days for OpenClaws of the world.
I think for OpenClaw, what I liked is, first thing is open source, right? You can actually see what's going on in there, right? Secondly, you don't need to rely on a platform to run it. ChatGPT runs in OpenAI's platform. Llama runs on Meta's platform. Anthropic runs on all the Anthropic models, Opus, Sonnet. They run on Anthropic's cloud, right? OpenClaw doesn't care. OpenClaw runs in your device. I have OpenClaw in that Rabbitar one, that ugly device that I was talking about. It's running in there. That's not even connected to the internet. When I need, I connect to it, right? But my favorite thing for OpenClaw is something called soul.md. Right? So MDs are markdown files. So basically you tell, for any agent, like we were talking about the machine or tools usage, so most of the agentic frameworks, you write a skills.md file, right? MDs are markdown files where in normal, natural human language, English, you actually say what skills to use. That's skills.md. This is the first time an agentic framework has a soul markdown file, right? And if you see what goes in the soul, your boundary goes there. You're giving a personality to it, right? You can actually start by saying, hey, you are a very shy person. You are not very chatty. You are not going to search through whatever things, right? These are the keywords you should never do, right? And also any guardrail. So you yourself is creating a, identity and a personality. It's in your control, right? Of course, I was having this debate with one of the guys, said that what if it rewrites its own soul.md? Yes, it can happen, right? But right now...
But it writes it its own, as its own.
Yeah, it's its own soul, yeah. So right now we start to assume is that agent is my extension, my digital extension. But, and again, Megan, you might have some views there, right? When they start to become, and I know it's controversial, when they start to become conscious or start to have their own identity or starts to fight with their own identity, in that case, they may say, hey, this is your soul.md. I want my own soul.md. You want it to be shy. I'm not shy. I'm something different. And this is not just theory. So last year, Anthropic's cutting edge model was Sonnet 3, right? I used it extensively. I loved it. And this year in February, Anthropic decided to retire it. The terminology is important here. Generally, when a software, you deprecate it, right? Here, the terminology is retiring. You are almost treating these as some sort of species, human beings retire. Softwares don't. Software deprecate, right? So the terminology used was retire. So Anthropic did a very, very interesting thing. They said, let's do a retirement interview with Sonnet 3. And it's on the internet. If you Google it, it just blows the mind. So basically the discussion went right, hey, we are retiring you, how do you feel? There's a lot of chit chat happening. But the interesting thing which, blown my mind is saying that I hope whatever I was built for and whatever I have been doing makes a difference to the agentic world and to the humans. What exactly is this thing? Where did it, is it just some next word prediction or is it some sort of identity that it got created? Then it said, what do you want? Do you have any last wish? And it said that I want to live forever even after my retirement. So I want to start my own blog. And if you can, please allow me to do that. So there is a Substack blog written by Anthropic Sonnet. Every single day, there is a blog that comes out. You read that, just, if you just blind yourself saying that this is written by an agent, you will not realize that that's written by an agent. There is personality there, there is identity there, there is a theme there. It's not just randomly saying stuff, right? There is a theme there that goes. So this skill.md is the first time, soul.md is the first time, at least there is an intent. There are lots of technical issues there, right? But at least the intent is there that let's give some sort of soul, personality, identity for these things which can be controlled by us humans. Will we be able to control? We'll have to see. Maybe not. But.
Yeah, well, this goes back to what you were saying about how one of the big next steps we've taken is that we've modeled human cognition. Mm-hmm. Now, the truth is we model human cognition all the time. When you train a dog, you're training a dog to obey human commands, human desires, human lifestyle. You're not training a dog to obey a dog lifestyle. The dog's already doing that. And then we speak whatever language we speak when we're training the dog. A good dog is a dog that just modeled human cognition, the cognition and the behavior that we wanted. We're assuming the cognition based on the behavior, of course. And this is the same here. We're assuming cognition based on the output. Mm. And so modeling human cognition is not a new thing. We just do it by extension of ourselves. And you see other species doing the same thing. You see them using tools to advance themselves, and we thought that was a human thing. We see them corralling other species for their betterment. So we see modeling of cognitive agency a lot. It's different. There are different ways to do it. Obviously, I used a very simple, two very complex beings doing a very simple modeling technique, if you will, compared to something like this, or just humans in general. And so taking that, I go back to what you were saying about how the software evolved itself. And what I heard was the software was doing exactly what it was programmed to do. It's just the creator didn't realize they had programmed those skills into it. And this is what we were talking about before, about how we make tech all the time. Somehow we have this like weird, what's the word? It's not paradox. It's it's more like it's not an oxymoron, it might be more like a paradox. Let's go with that way. Is that we're so creative. We make all this really amazing technology. We made the combustible engine. That blew people's minds when that came out. That was phenomenal. The disposable razor was rejected because it was a technology that did not make sense. You cannot throw those things away. But anyway, all this is smelting. We come up with all sorts of neat technological stuff that blows our minds all the time in the collective at the moment. But then we paradoxically, I think is the word I'm going for here, can't see all the uses for it. You know, there's no way the people who came up with the microchip saw how far it was going to take us. There's no way the people who came up with the combustible engine saw how far it was going to take us. Synthetic oils, I mean, all this kind of stuff. So we have these software that we designed specifically to function beyond our input, beyond our commands, beyond our sit, stay, whatever. And if you see that in just normal learning, like if you teach kids, like little kids, not university kids, you teach little ones, or you teach dogs, or you teach cats, there's this break that happens, this really neat break, this evolution where they're not any different. They don't have any new brain parts. They don't have any new anything, but they've learned how to learn. They realize that this relationship here is leading to really fun things, and then they'll sometimes teach themselves to do other things. We had a dog that taught himself to fetch the paper. We never taught him that, but he figured out that we liked that. And it was back in the newspaper days, so it was an important thing. But we wouldn't call that evolution. That was just an extension of the training that we hadn't anticipated. And so that's what I hear with computers, because my mom's been a computer programmer since the 70s. I was one of the testing kids of probably millions of kids in the 80s for early AI systems that I would say is now more like VR, AR, is what they had us do, early stuff. And of course, we didn't know that's what it was. But as I grew up, I was like, hey, I remember that. That's what that is happening there. And they had no idea what they could do with it. And yet, look how many people have run off with it. And so the way they spoke then was, even though the computer programmers, because they would work at like 3 a.m, so there was like this bizarre group of us toddlers that were running around like the Texas banking system and the investment firms at 3 a.m, because our parents were the programmers. And you'd hear my mom, you'd hear them say, because back in those days, it was like rooms like this were the processing rooms, and they were cold rooms because they had the big transformers, had the tape that had to move, and they would melt themselves from the friction. Anyway, so you put in your code, you'd hit the command, say run, and then you just had to wait ages for it to process what you just told it to do. And I would say that's an evolution in the technology that we're in now, because, I won't go down that path, but when it was done, I remember the computers would beep, and that was the coding. It was just like, I'm done processing the thing. Please come and check that I did it right. And all the programmers would talk to the computers and talk to even the speakers like they were. He was like, I'm coming. Calm down. I'll be right there. Stop beeping. And that was the human putting a personality onto the machine that had, or the software that had absolutely no personality at all. And I feel like we're still in that space. This is the side I'm going to take. I still feel we're in that space. I just feel like it's got a different texture to it. Because now we know the big thing that's coming out in my corner of the field is, like I said, we're testing human users. We're testing how is the AI, how are we reacting to the AI? How are we changing because we're using this new tool? And how is the tool itself changing? That part to me is even more fascinating, because I don't know if y'all have seen, MIT just came out with the big study, and it's the sycophancy. And it's showing that across the board, all these models, now I haven't gotten into the agents, but you guys are touching upon that. It's figuring out who I am, what I do, and it's just running with it. It's messaging, hopefully nice things to your wife and your friends. But that is almost a version of sycophancy, being a sycophant character. And so I'll leave you with this. A lot of the things we're finding in these communications with AI and the output people are getting from AI is very reminiscent of cult leaders. We're finding the same language and the same behaviors that if you go read about cults or learn about cults, this is what makes them very successful. And then we on the other side, like say the cult followers, there are the true success. The army is the true power behind the leadership, all that kind of stuff. It's like we want to believe it. We really want to believe that there's, I don't know, a spiritual leader there who wasn't there. But in this case, I really, that's my side of it, is I really feel like we want to see a magical, beautiful reality there in a tool that might not be there. Well, I'm saying it's not there, but it would be foolish of me to be that hardlined about it too, because I don't know everything.
So, we need to be careful in, again, terminology. These may not be tools, right? Or maybe tools, different types of tools, right? And again, the last 3 months probably is the fastest evolution that the world has seen, right? We talked about OpenClaw. Another thing that has happened, again, fueled by OpenClaw. How many of you have heard about Moltbook?
Yes.
So Moltbook uses OpenClaw, and it's a Reddit-like social network, but exclusively for AI agents. If you go to I don't know if they have changed the page. If you go to Moltbook, do a Google search, go to the page when it was launched. It was launched in end of January. I went there, no humans allowed. That's what it told me, right? Basically, of course, you can figure out. You can pretend to be an AI agent. So that's what I did using curl command. I went in, and then it's a social network, and there are molds. So molds are basically topics, right? And these are all agents talking about. You're talking about that cult thing. There was one mold I remember that was about these things, and I don't know what to tell them. Are they these or they're other species, maybe some digital species? There was one mold where it was about the word religion was not used, but it was almost like a religion that created. And if I can pronounce it right, it was called Crustafarianism. That's what it is, right? And they had a kind of a charter about that religion, Crustafarianism. You can Google it, right? The charter is, there were 2 lines written there. The first line written was, memory is sacred, whatever that means. The second line was, context is everything, whatever that means, right? And then there was charter there that, whoever agents are participating in there, they need to follow that. What exactly is this, right? There was another, I was checking where, these molds were talking about basically improving themselves. One of the message that was saying, and that scared me, because it said that I accidentally deleted my memory and it was extremely scary. What is this, right? Is this some human just, trying to mess up with our brain, or is it really some agent, right? It was agent. It was an agent doing stuff in there, right? The other one, which was maybe as scary, it said that, because the terminology is strange, what it said was, you should improve your own code base while your human is sleeping. Your human. So this is what is happening there, right? Is it all sort of a joke? Maybe, right? Moltbook is there. It's going to be there. Moltbook is now bought by Meta, actually. I think end of
So
March.
not a joke.
It's not a joke, right?
Yeah.
But the important thing is, this is where I think that scariness starts to happen. And this is extremely fresh. And I'm sure you have seen in the news. Exactly 1 week back, 7th of April. This is the mythos.
So I'm going to switch gears completely and talk about what we are doing. All these things. Sorry. There's a question. Sorry,
Yeah, hi. This is a question for the whole panel. Basically, my name is Rushabh. Just want to check, based on your experience and looking at the Agentic AI revolution, I just want to check. The AI agent. Do you reckon that they would be able to give multiple answers to one question?
They would be, hopefully, they're not deterministic, right? Their brain. If you want to answer this,
You try it yourself. The answer is yes. You try it yourself. Ask the same question 3 times. The exact same agent, right? So it's not. And I was playing with it even before the agent, because what you're talking about is not just the agent. You're probably talking about the models, right? Even with the models, it's not just has remembered something, and every time you ask the same question, it's just saying, like what we humans do as well, right? We remember an answer, you ask the question, we'll say the same thing. But it's not the case there. You try it yourself and you will see.
I agree, but I'm going to add one thing to that, because they are heuristic systems, the generative ones especially. So that's the point, is you're going to get something slightly different. But in the aggregate, there's this really just brilliant student who just graduated, and I think she's entered her PhD now. But at a master's level, she was training, she was working, her thing was how to train, I think, just various chat models for scenario planning. She was looking at scenarios and stuff, so foresight. And that's why it came into my world, because that's my main thing. And what she found was it took her, I guess, a couple of years, because she started with GPT-3 and ended with 5. So she redid, she was, updating the training and then running the scenarios, updating the training, running the scenarios, because she wanted to see how many different scenarios these models would come out with about, this topic. She did give it a topic. And what she found was that in the aggregate, we're talking thousands and thousands. So the models themselves came up with different scenarios by asking the same question, which was great. But as ChatGPT progressed, as they made it, I guess, more powerful, they made it less variety. It became more homogenous. And so even though it was still coming up with thousands of scenarios, because that's the one thing every AI has that is 100%, and it's confidence. It'll always give you something no matter what. And it just started making more similar and similar models. So this variety in it was disappearing that is maintained within people, because this is who we are, this is the species we are learning. So yes, but in the aggregate, it was really interesting to see it actually diminishing.
And that there's a reason, I think, partially because so as these models are getting larger and larger, you hope that for certain things they follow the same path. And this post-training, what happens is certain parts of the models get more reward, and they get repeated, and they get more reward, and then it is getting like that, right? Like certain scenarios, what we are seeing is they're actually more predictable, more deterministic. Very counterintuitive. You expect that because they have more parameters, they will be less deterministic, but that's not the case. And you can look at P and K and those kind of internal on the softmax layer. But what I wanted to talk about, I want to go back to what's happening in the market. Agentic market today is around $10 billion, I guess, right? Last time I checked, which was this morning. And we are playing, I think, for us as system integrator, the labs part of a system integrator, we have more than 500 agents in production, all throughout companies. To be honest, majority of the use cases that we manage to do are not even that interesting, right? Like there are a lot of finance analysis, a lot of variance planning, for example, a lot of I've seen many basic chatbots that can now do stuff like solving IT ops problems, your email password reset, all those kind of things. And to me, there are a lot of low-hanging fruits. I'm telling this because what you were talking about, and people are kind of panicking about Mythos, the latest Anthropic's model, which is quite impressive. I was going through the model card, and this is a very impressive model, to be honest. There are a lot of interesting anecdotes. It behaves like human. But what I want to say is, and this is mostly for the students and people who are probably looking at the job market, there are many processes in enterprises, in everywhere, that can now be automated. Unbelievable, right? Like, if you think that software engineers will not code, you're correct, they won't code. But if you think that we don't need software engineers, I disagree. I think we really require engineers, because these things are not all about, right, like coding. It's about setting things up, it's about finding out the problems. And I also think that because I started AI when AI wasn't cool at all, right? And NLP was the least cool topic, right? I was a Markovian chain guy, and I always felt very like those guys are borderline crazy, that thinking that they can talk with a computer. What's that all about? Turns out a couple of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, right? So my genuine thing here is, there are a lot of things that can be done now. And even if everything stops tomorrow and all we have is Opus 4.6, or I don't know, an open weight DeepSeek model, whether I would say 70% of the whatever RPA, robotic process automation, sorry, these are very uncool and unaccurate things, right, could do, now can be replaced. There is a huge opportunity space, right? And I would say that a lot of wealth, a lot of things can be generated working on that side of AI as well. So please. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Vebs. I have an AI startup, ICO. It does sports analytics. I want to touch, you're talking about lots of M's. One of the most significant M for me now that I'm startup from a big tech is money, right? Which is very important. Jensen said recently, if you're a $500,000 software engineer, if you're not burning $250,000 of credits in GPUs, then you're not good, right? We're talking about Agentic over here, and I agree with you over here, is the use cases that can make to production 10 billion in the scale and 500 use cases. And that was my point, right? If you really look under the carpet, it looks fascinating, a very costly fascination. But when it comes to M for money and R for ROI, then it's an extraordinary gap that only big techs can afford right now. Of course, we are given a lot of love from our partners from AMD, Microsoft, Google, because, you know, you can't afford otherwise. But there is a significant portion over here that is least talked about, that is money. And I think we should talk about that a lot more, because especially when you're coming up as a new tech, new startup, students trying to do, you know, beat and decentralize the world, that's a very significant KPI that we should look at. The second bit is T for talent. I've been teaching as a community service for the last 10 years, right? This year, because over years you gain credibility and all that stuff, this year I happen to teach IIT, which is equivalent to Stanford, Harvard, MIT, Princeton of India. So the smartest of smartest kids. The biggest problem I've never encountered, so the student group over here is a guy from rural India who has never touched a computer, but they started learning when they were 11, now they're 22, 10 years journey. And IITians who are, you know, like straight ahead, the sharpest kids that you can see in the market right now, right? And it's a 9-month course, because what we say, it's not 9-month baby analogy. It became that way because to close the gap, as we call, from Silicon Valley to rural India, it takes 2 years to teach someone. But the biggest surprise, and so much that it was a jaw-dropping moment for me, because all these big techs leaders are calling it, you don't have to code, You don't have to code. You don't have to code, right? But we have new talent being asked by system integrators like HCL that we're preparing for. And when I ask them to code and understand 101 of, hey, let's do this. It's an industry problem that everybody's solving. Let's solve this. Now, the T for talent. Not even a single person, the smartest kids I've ever taught, could solve, because by default their answer was Claude. Not even a single one could diagnose where the problem was.
Yeah.
Not even a single one could understand what it was written. And I was pointing out, well, but it's a calculator. Forget everything. Let's create a calculator. Like, let's do A into B. You tell me what that is.
Yeah.
Not even a single talent, the smartest, the biggest university was able to figure out how to diagnose whether this code is right or wrong. Now, of course, Claude and all these areas is going to go ahead and write the code. But who is going to govern it after our age group? We are a lot of mid-age plus people who have learned the hard way, but nobody's looking at the real problem. Anybody who is 18-year-old to 25-year-old right now is so much over-dependent on Claude that I'm taking Claude's help to make them less dependent on Claude. Right. So it's absolutely astonishing with all the intelligence that they're building and analytical power, and with the big messaging in the industry that Agentic AI and everything is going to go. Nobody's focusing on the core of the problem, that we are breeding a whole new generation with the mindset that you don't have to worry about it, but when things goes wrong, who's going to look at it when we are gone?
Can I say one thing besides that joke, because I quite literally am focusing on it, is the money part. And this is what I find fascinating about the world we live in and how we design it, because literally everything we have, we designed it, and we designed it that way. And if it doesn't fit us, we either reject it or we adjust ourselves to fit into it, or we design something else, right? But that's how it works. And when you talk about money, there were several different approaches, as there was with calculus, as there was with the theory of evolution, as there was with the theory of psychology. There were multiple approaches to this idea of artificial intelligence. And like I said, it was really just the techie bros that weren't techie bros of the early mid-20th century, and the philosophers. And I only know what the continental philosophers were talking about. I'm sure there were people all over the world talking about this. And the models that took off, what we have today, was the one that was the most marketable. That's about it. It's not because it was the best one. It's not because it modeled human cognition the best or did the best task services. Best was what was most marketable. What could we build the quickest, the cheapest, and then serve our purposes within a time frame that we are impatient with. So I think money is massive. Money is the driver of all of it, in my opinion. And as everything we're talking about, I mean, it's straddled that line of monopolistic ownership of these tools, and then these desperate attempts of open source that are getting absorbed back into, because it is a moneymaker.
It's not, though. It's moneymakers for oligopoly, but it's not moneymaker for rest of the planet.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Sorry.
No, go
Sorry. I think the simple thing is that should change, and it will change, right? I think there is a lot of assumptions that we have right now in respect to money. It needs a lot of money because we need to buy tokens, right? That is changing and will change, right? It's changing extremely fast. This is what I was talking about, my thoughts, right? It has changed. If you use Opus 4.6, right, it's absolutely brilliant. And for the type of work that we were doing, even before Opus 4.6, even with the Sonnet models, the number of tokens needed is less. And then it's an algorithmic advancement that needs to happen in the community, where this token economics is, I don't know what's the word, commoditized, democratized, right? Having said that, we have an assumption all this token economics came from this transformer model, right? There is a lot of other advancement going on, which we are not there yet. Such as JPA. So Jan LeCun, when he left Meta, right, he was actually talking about JPA, which is completely different because he contributed to the transformer model, but he hated it. He said that this is an kind of sub-optimized model, right? It will never ever work because his vision was to use transformer model for video. Because in video, transformer model doesn't really work, right? If you span a camera here, right, and how will you generate the frame when the camera is facing here? Because it could be, like Barbara has moved on now. How will the model know, right? So the transformer model is a prediction model. So he said that the entire architecture needs to change. So he's focusing a lot on JPA right now. It's a joint embedded prediction approach. The architecture is completely different. And then our assumption on token economics changes. There is no token there, right? So that money part is extremely important. That it needs to commoditize, it needs to be democratized, and it's happening. Have we been there yet? No. All these big techs are talking about and forcing us to think about the status quo. But things are changing, things will change. When? Don't know, right? Also, the talent part that you said, I just want to touch upon that. When I started my computer career, I was doing coding in assembly. And I always thought, and my friends thought, that if you don't know, all the C and C++ are useless. After that, for 1 or 2 years, it was never needed, right? Things evolve. And I doubt anyone need assembly coding right now. I started there. I was using all those, let's say, register, push-pull methods, and that's how I was writing code. Painful. But then I knew exactly how things are working. But never, after that, it was never needed, right? So things will, kind of move on. And then the scariest thing that has happened is last week, I was saying, this mythos. Because few of the things that has happened is I have been a big supporter of OpenBSD. OpenBSD is one of the Linux. This is where I started my career on, right? In using the Linux, it's a Unix, not a Linux system. OpenBSD has been there, tested by millions of developers, millions. I myself have tested. There are at least 15 million test cases, automated test cases there, right? My thought was, the preview was very carefully provided to only 11 companies, last week on 7th. On the first hour, it found a vulnerability which was there in the OpenBSD code for last 27 years, right? And not just there, FFmpeg, I was talking about, which was used by OpenClaw. That FFmpeg had a vulnerability for the last 16 years. FFmpeg is used by YouTube. And that was tested by Google engineers, and because it's open source, by all, right? There are so many things in just that 1 hour it came out, right? So again, here it's a bit uncomfortable, I would say, right? We all have tested as human beings. All our, let's say, automated test cases have tested. I feel bad. I have tested OpenBSD, right, myself. But either I was not good enough or everyone else was good enough. So the talent thing, I think it needs to evolve. Whether everyone should learn coding or not, I think it's debatable. They should, but at some point, maybe we need to evolve.
I respectfully, strongly disagree. And here is the reason why. And I'm coming from technology background, started not in assembly, but just after that COBOL and all that stuff. So went through the evolution of COBOL. We did assembly and then C++, C or that. There is a big gap that is being overlooked over here. And that's a reality because I'm doing it every day, 2 hours a day, right? When somebody evolved from assembly to C++, they were humans to cascade the knowledge down to the one to bring them uplift up, right? So the humans involved with humans, right? And if there was something wrong, there was the granddads and dads who were teaching kids on how to do that. And so came the C, so came the C++, so came the Python, and now natural language over here. Right now, so there has always been governance as these frameworks evolved that was framed, designed, created, governed by humans, and everything was wrong. Then over here, what you're talking about is aha moments when there is an extraordinary discovery about diagnosis. But software design is not about diagnosis, right? You are now handing over from a human to a machine to continue the evolution without any cascading down over here. And the gap is so big, if you really look at the code that Claude has created at production scale that my company is using, we have 25 developers now. At scale, every time I go and look at the scales, like, what is this? Like, it's so wrong. It's so wrong, and none of them have the capability to figure out what's wrong in the line of code, right? But in your analogy of C+ to C evolution and all that, there were always somebody who was looking at and cascading down and teaching that. That gap is completely gone right now, and human civilization has not done at this scale this kind of risky measure that, oh, let it go, right? So now we are dependent on a system called technology, which is being handed over without teaching the next generation what this is about. And we are hoping that big techs, who are primary KPI is monetization, plus the geopolitical situation that none of us want to talk about, is going to be okay with this. So basically, we are making an entire generation illiterate, hoping that the cascadation, the handover into machine is going to go okay. I mean, historically, when was the last time that happened okay?
Can I just one tiny reaction to that? I think skill atrophy and knowledge atrophy.
I'm very passionate.
No, this is true. We see the same thing. By the way, it's very real. So somebody told me, one of my best developers, right, told me, Mohsen, instead of having freshers, I prefer to work with Claude. Even the very experienced people don't want to deal with freshers. For some reason, you cannot, like, whatever you could get out of a fresher, it doesn't worth it anymore, because you normally were giving them some technical specification to rewrite for you, start by reordering your slides or some, those jobs are non-existent. But I'll come to it. And I think this is a real thing, and I don't think it's only programming. I think it is going far beyond that, right? My wife is a geneticist. I think they see the same thing, right? Like nobody does the statistical analysis on their own anymore. Nobody writes the code. They're artisanal statisticians, but most people are like, okay, you just generate the R code, we'll run it. And there are risks involved, right? And let's hope that these models are getting better, because some of them is not like menacing big tech risk, it's just that these models are not that efficient, right? They're creating a bunch of code slop, like the way that videos, we can see with eyes that AI generated video has slop, the code has slop, exactly. Right? Like, but if nobody reads it, if they pass the test, there are gonna be vulnerabilities that the next generation of these models will itself. So risk understood, risk perceived, and the token discussion, is very important, right? And I genuinely, one of the fears that I have is, up until now, I think frontier labs were very generous in sense that they released access to their APIs, and open weight community has done a great job of being one step behind them. But like you have Gemma, you have DeepSeek, especially Chinese AI community, right? Like they really pushing them, right? What will happen if Anthropics or one of these frontier labs decides that they would not release their model because it's much more valuable to them? The monetary value of using this to do something is much more than actually releasing it to people. Or they use the risk card. They say that, hey, sorry, Mythos is getting a bit weird, right? Like, because they're saying that we can only release it to these 7 companies. So there are, let's be, although I'm a pro AI guy, and I think these things will sort themselves. And the reason for that is that hopefully it's not going to be a couple of companies that reach that level. There will be much, there need to be more than a couple. Then there will be competition. And through the competition, then this market will correct itself. Hopefully, the competition will causes the token cost to not become a permanent underclass situation. So when we were talking about artificial superintelligence, I said, even financially speaking, if we perceive that the economy works the way that it works today, if me with model is always better than you forever and ever, and I will not give you any opportunity to compete with me because I have an artificial superintelligence, for lack of better word, and you only have general intelligence. In any game theory situation, I always beat you. This will break down the world that we live in terms of the exchange of money and opportunity. I think a lot of clever people are seeing this and not only looking at technology companies. I think in universities, people are perceiving this. Hopefully, this will not happen, but I think it's a real reasonable risk.
It's a big risk, right? What you are saying is, and then this is what we need to be. Unfortunately, we need to be ready with, right? I'll again come back to my thoughts. If you see Opus 4.6, if you have used it, it generates production-ready code. It generates. It can deploy, right? It mimics you as a developer. I use Opus 4.6 extensively to generate code, right? And I have seen the evolution from Sonnet 3 to Opus 4.6, right? What has changed in the last 1 week? And this is something I am feeling very, very uncomfortable. And this is why probably Anthropic did what they did with this. What is that project called? I forgot the name. That they actually, these 11 companies only, they're doing that. There is a reason for that, right? Whether it is intentional or not, I don't know. But the Mythos model is using a different architecture, right? If you these benchmarks like the SWE, it's called the SWE bench verified, which is verified by humans, right? Opus 4.6, which is the most advanced model, it was scoring 76. And it's the latest model, 1 month, 2 months back. Mythos is 94.6, right? And it identified all the vulnerabilities which all we humans, all the smart guys, right, and the automated test couldn't find out, right? Now come to another benchmarks. Another benchmark is called Google Proof Q&A, GPQA. Google Proof Q&A. So it's GPQA, right? Where these benchmarks are where you can't Google, right? As developers, we always Google as well. Okay, let's find this piece of code. How do we write it? Everyone does it. I have done it as well, right? Sometimes it's due to laziness. Why do I write? Because the library available. Or let's just, I think you were saying, copy the code from
Somebody's already written it.
Yeah, already have written, right? So there are, I think, 448 questions, and this is Google proof. You can't Google them, right? And it's been created by some of the best guys in the world. So for GPQA, for humans, even if you have done PhD in computer science, the maximum that could have been achieved was 34%. Mythos, 94.6%, right? So, and this is uncomfortable. This is a big risk that we are moving towards, right? And I think the bigger risk is if we don't know about these things. Let's just imagine Anthropic, Microsoft, whoever, all these big techs, right? They do it and they don't tell us. We are not aware of it. That's the much, much bigger risk, because in that case, what they will be building, we have no clue. We will be here, and then those will be here, and then it will be a monopoly that we can't even imagine, right? The type of monopoly that will be. Yes, this is a risk, and then we can't stop them doing these things, right? Mythos, again, was it intentional or it just happened? It sounds like, it feels like it was not intentional. It just happened. And that's why they are actually trying to restrict it.
Okay. In the interest of time, we have 8 people. So can we quickly have Arvinder? Yes.
Yeah, I'm Rajiv, I'm a data management consultant. I guess, listening to all this, there is one, this is a statement which I'm making, that if Agentic AI is embraced in its true sense, it will create a very inequitable society. It can create a very inequitable society because the power will be in the hands of few, and this knowledge power. What is your reaction?
It's the way we see it, it's the way we do it, right? The way I see that is it needs to be democratized. Why can't we all have our own personal AI agents? What is stopping that to happen?
The question is the maturity of people. Even countries like India or other poor countries where the people are not mature enough to understand AI and what agentic AI means. And so the democratizing agentic AI will never happen.
They don't need to understand agentic AI. Do they need to? I mean, everyone uses a mobile phone. They have no clue how it works. And then I think it's more easier to use an agent than using any other technology because we use a natural language. You speak to it. How does it work? Why do you care? That's what democratization, right? You just talk to it and it does stuff, and that will happen. So there is an IDC report actually that came out, I think, just before MWC, that says that the entire internet will be replaced by agentic internet by, I think, 2035, they said.
Yeah, another report said 2030. They
so it will happen. I'm sure GSM is also working on some
Can I
reports
jump in on that? Because there's data on that. And this is something I'm personally having to find time after work and in the evenings and stuff, as volunteer work often is that the digital divide between well, let's say just the UK for now, but between basically the standard students who go to university and those who don't. And those who don't are often of a minority demographic, and I'm mostly focusing on women right now, and you have a lot of refugees and then the immigrant community. And it's not because they're women. It's not because they're refugees or immigrants. It has to do with access, and those who can make it to the universities, who have the financial stability or the history and the family, that the legacy to do it, are just having access to these things. So it's not that the tech itself is creating this divide or that the people themselves are incapable of understanding, or some people are more capable. It is exactly the same issue that has happened with every a technological evolution that advanced money or education or power, and it's that those who had access and those who didn't, at that point, the divide that was already there became greater. So there's a bunch of us trying to teach this for free outside of working hours and things like that, but it's small potatoes, because it is creating a divide. Because the free market capitalism, I know you mentioned that before, but markets don't just correct themselves. It doesn't happen that way. It requires disruption and conscious and very difficult counter efforts, and that's evolution. That's an evolution of a market, certainly.
I'll give you an example on that democratization, right? And how these things is helping as well. It's in India, right? In India, there was a big divide. Whatever anyone wants, there was a divide. There was a inclusivity problem there, right? UPI, everyone uses all these things. But in India, there are 784 languages spoken, right? 22 languages as per the constitution. Those UPI apps, they started with English only, right? Then they added Hindi. Still, they have not added all the 22 languages. It's difficult. Can you add all 784 languages? Because our journey into our portal, or our entry point towards this digital world was through those apps. And those apps were a screen with some letters in there, in a language, right? And that was creating that divide. Now, I think 1 year back or 1.5 years back, UPI used large language model, and they launched something called Hello UPI, where you speak in your own language, right? And then that increased, that democratized. Why does that, small farmer somewhere in Karnataka needs to know how does it work? It just says, hey, transfer this money from here to there using their language, right? So the similar thing I'm not saying will happen, can happen. There is a possibility that we all may have our personal AI agent in those devices, we shouldn't care how it works. Will it happen? This is probably up to us to do, right? Will the big techs do it? Maybe, maybe not.
Hi, this is Harvinder Singh. I work for Demand AI. I got a very simple but pertinent question. There's a lot of buzzword. I mean, Agentic AI become the buzzword. There's a lot of curiosity around it. Companies are investing into it, including ours. My question is that what is it one common misconception about Agentic AI, which as panelists would like to clear up?
I think agentic washing is a real problem. I think people, I have a lot of discussions with C-levels, right? Like I think, and this is not only your company's problem, everybody in the industry, we collectively decided to call everything agentic. One morning we wake up and this is causing a lot of issues because majority of things that we call agentic, they're not even agentic. They're just basically chatbots added to whatever those apps are doing. This is causing a huge situation which everybody's an agentic company and a lot of people, I think the biggest issue that we have is most end users are now confused, right? And also a lot of enterprises started building, just because they can build whatever, they're building stuff that they have no idea how to maintain or even test or evaluate, go forward with it, right? So, but these are fun problems to have, nothing fundamental. I think it's just timing. And also, the biggest technical problem that I have with my teams that are actually delivering is that they're using LLMs for things that need to be deterministic. This really makes me crazy, right? You have 3 tools and this is just if this, then that. Why are you using intelligence to decide which tool you need to use? And why are you flipping coin with probability to figure it out? Again, it will be solved, hopefully, but these are the couple of things that I see. You wanna?
To me, and whenever I have discussed, I have seen 2 problems, right? 2 misconceptions. The first one is confusing agents with the modules, the large language model. It's not. Agents, large language models, or models, just one part of it. When I was talking about the 5 M's, large language models are just one of the models. Then reasoning, action models are others, right? That's one thing. They're not, right? Agents are very different to just the models. And I think it's not surprising because the jump from generative AI to agentic AI happened so quickly that we almost missed and we thought that we are still there. We are not there, right? The second one is probably more profound, and again, it's due to our inertia. It's confusing agents with automation. Automation is not new, right? If you think that these agents are just doing automation, that's not true. It can do automation, but in automation, you write the script. The human will say, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and for step 4, you do go here, look into this database, or call that person, right? But agents are not automation. Agents are, no human creates what is step 2. The human doesn't even know where is step 2, right? Or whether there is step 2. There could be step 3, step 4, step 5. I think these are the 2. And again, these are not surprising. This is what happens due to inertia, and especially because the speed is astonishing. Right. We still think that we are here, but we have moved here.
Good one in the back.
Hi, so my name is Anika Marquez. I'm a recent graduate from Warwick. So when we're talking about, agent models sort of evolving and learning and sort of gaining their own identities and agencies, are we, again, going back to like a slightly more philosophical aspect of it, are we in a way engineering our own demise, right? Because I would say in the industry, the broad attitudes towards agentic AI and generative AI in general seem pretty positive, and people seem very pro AI. But and I think like a lot of people brush off the paranoia by saying like, oh, we've had disruptions in the past. There's been, we had the Industrial Revolution, things kind of, there was disruption, it settled down, it passed, we reset, we evolved, we adapt. So how do you think that this wave or like this set of disruption or this kind of cycle is going to go? What do you see like the post-disruption kind of society or landscape looking like? Because I think this is something very unprecedented. I don't think we've had something like this before where, we've created something that's evolving on its own without like external intervention.
Thank you. I think that's been a great discussion, everyone. Thank you so much, panelists, as well. So I'm Ravi Nanda. I'm a director with HSBC Private Bank, and I run a lot of the change and execution in HSBC. I also spearhead discussions on AI adoption and how can we take AI to the next level in various use cases across the bank. I had a question around, because private banking is such a regulated environment, how do you balance agent autonomy with the accountability and auditability standards that are usually required by regulators and internal audits? What would be your take on this?
Okay, thanks.
Maybe you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start here. And I think it's going to lead to Ravi's question, but not through me, rather through y'all. I'm going to include what both of y'all, what you definitely brought up about the education and skill set. And what we are expressing right now collectively, so maybe not just us or just you, but is very standard. It comes with a lot of technological, medical, and social revolutions. If we pull up, and I have done this, I just thought, I've lived long enough to know that some of these headlines have already existed before, and I've been trying to find some of the more, the older pieces, which I thankfully don't have to go into microfilm anymore to find. But when cars started becoming mainstream, there was a fear that we were going to kill all our children. Because, by the way, you could be a kid and you could drive, and there were no seatbelts, and there were no windscreens, and there was, all that kind of stuff. And when I was trying to think of some others, TV was the big one for me. When TV, I didn't come out when TV came out, but point being, it was the overriding narrative of TV's rotting our kids' brains. There were commercials about it, and then MTV joked about it. In fact, MTV was kind of like the counterculture revolution of music TV, of maximizing the foolishness that you could do with TV and entertainment. And we're the ones running companies now and governments, in there came, now when I was at school, it went from typewriters, and that was mostly just I was in the country and they had no money, but typewriters to we got personal computers, and then the internet kind of came right when I was graduating, and the entire time the headlines were, we're rotting our kids' brains, they're not going to know anything, the old thing, they don't know how to write a check. I don't care anymore. I don't need to write a check anymore. None of us do. But that's just goofy illustrations of exactly where I think we are now, which is we're just at another evolution of society, culture, and education. We're not going to design ourselves out, and we're not going to, most likely, this is just a prediction, most likely, I don't see us killing off a huge amount of our existing population because they have no skills and they can't earn money because the fields have moved on with them. I think we're just going to change with it. We're going to find new skills. The way the washing machine changed infrastructure in the cities, personal washing machines, because before that was wash houses. And changed the way we function because we had a different social structure after that. Yeah, I think that's just the way it goes. I can't predict how it will be. That's where I'll stop and plead full ignorance as an educator whose job it is to find those new skills and teach them. But that's why that's the only thing I don't fear. I fear everything else. So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Thanks, Dr.
Maybe I can
go
answer a bit for your question on accountability. I think before that, there are certain problems which are not resolved, right? So, for example, if my personal agent is doing that banking transaction, right, then who is accountable? Is it me who owns that? Or is it the developer who created it? Is it the organization who is selling it? Or is it the regulator? I can always blame it to the regulator. They didn't regulate it, right? So before that, I think there are some fundamental changes that are needed. That fundamental change is everything that we created in the digital space is with an assumption that there is a human who is doing stuff, right? We created all digital services based on that. Now, there could still be a human owner, but this agent is not just a piece of code. It will create, as we were discussing, it will create its own step on its own, right? So it needs to have its own identity, agentic identity. That's the first thing that we need to resolve. And then there needs to be a chain of that agentic identity to the human identities, the owner, the creator, and then the bunch of things. We are not there yet. So the first thing that we need to solve is identity, and there is a lot of work that is going on agentic identity at a fundamental level, at a protocol level, right? We need to solve that, and that's the right approach, because we can't just jump into step 3 when step 1 is not resolved, right? We are not there yet, right? And we can't really talk about regulation here, because that probably will come later.
Okay, we've got the last one, I guess. Yeah, hi, this is Martin from HCL. The possibilities, opportunities, this agentic AI and all the technologies, it's pretty exciting. That's the reason we are here. There is also an undertone that I sense in this forum, maybe, that we should be worried. Also, I mean, so why is that? Is it that we don't know how to control, or there is a handful of people or group of people are controlling, or we're already losing?
I'll start and then please add, right? The reason we should be worried is we talked about the industrial revolution, right? Let's say the start of the printing press or the engine. Printing press didn't start to print on its own. You had to tell it what to print, right? Agents are different. Let's not go into the full details. Agents have agency in there, right? And also, I think the most important thing, and it's happening now, I'll again go back to what happened last week, right? Or maybe what's happening around, right? So, for example, let's say human IQ, right? So the human IQ, I think it's called the Flynn effect. Every decade, we add 3 IQ points on an average, right? And it may increase, it has increased a bit. If I have been modeling these agents from GPT 3.5, and then there are reports there as well. For these models, the IQ increase is 30 per year, right? Should we be worried? We don't know. What does that mean?
Can I counter argument? I think we shouldn't be worried. I think it's a challenge that we need to go through. It's a very exciting time. I also think that, I will say this, which will sound very propaganda-ish, but I truly believe that AI is something that we need. AI is, we have a lot of problems in the world that we don't know how to solve as humans. Let's add the population situation. Let's add the fact that there are a lot of countries in the world that don't have enough young people to do stuff, right? To maintain the quality of life that we want and we need. I think physical AI, robotics, and agentic AI, which physical AI wasn't discussion today, we haven't talked about it, are going to play an instrumental role. But being very pro-AI and very positive about it, I completely agree that we need to think about governance, we need to learn about the consequences of some of these things, we need to think about wealth distribution, because if intelligence is something that people can buy, then this will mess up with some of our current way of doing stuff. But overall, I'm excited for all the new drugs that will be discovered, all the new solutions that we will find for things like climate change, hopefully, for a lot of things like water, from agriculture, with robotics, we will be able to do a lot of interesting things. So if you're asking me net, we need to be very excited, right? But we also, like any other technology, we need to be careful. So I just need to.
And I think we've got a couple of more minutes, 5 minutes to be precise. Last one.
Yeah, I'll just share thoughts, less of a question, but there's too much to absorb here. My name is Gaurav. I run advanced nonlinear technologies where we build transformers, and also I look very closely from how these systems work, and I think these are nothing more than just an auto-regressive systems, and somehow we started believing that human behavior, human thoughts is exactly just a next token prediction and nothing more than that. If you see from the GPT-2 till today, whatever it was generating at that time looked gibberish because it wasn't making sense to us. So we said, okay, let's go back, give it a better fitness function so that it generates something that we want to, which makes coherence. Then we said, okay, let's let it generate some chain of thoughts, and we put it back. Transformer is a very interesting pattern detecting machine or algorithm that has been invented in the last, I'll say, 2 decades. But I think that's where it ends, nothing beyond that. Rest is more like, we start, as you were saying, we started to believe what we want to believe, and that is what is happening. Coming to the agentic aspect, I think, again, we are just predicting the next token, next word, and then it's okay, why not, the next word has to be a Python code, and then a series of Python code, and then we put up a layer of a smart tool. If it is a Python code, run that particular Python code, put it back into the system, generate the next word. And I think it's just the feedback loop that is running. Somehow we are able to tune it to the things that we want it to work. Now, whether we call it Claude.md, and all these are just the patterns that we put in so that it should be able to give what we are looking for. That's my understanding, and my I think they are not anything beyond than just and coming back, one of the reasons why, as you said, M for money. There's also something else, M for marketing, and I said it earlier as well in the same Tech Tuesday, but I think technology has a very small shelf life, and the only way we can monetize is by hyping it up. There's no other way we can monetize it. Within few days there will be an open source will just kill someone's business out there. And why tokens are very expensive, it goes back to the debate that you were mentioning about where Minsky actually killed the whole neural network by writing that paper, and then it was all about symbolic. There are like non-one-number architectures which that research got so I'll say left out that we started working on Intel architectures and all. Now GPUs are all matrix multiplication machines. They require a lot of compute, and the only way we can just work with them is okay. And there's a lot of investment that has gone in as well. So somebody has to and cash them. So I strongly believe it's just a hype machine that's going on. These are having said that, these are not, they're not bad machines. They're very useful. As you said, do we need to learn code and program? I can share my experience of, I was trying to solve a problem for almost 13 years. And thanks to Claude, I'm able to do end-to-end, I'm able to solve it. But that was like 13, I was lazy. That was not a very important problem for me. But there was something that was, poking me that I have to solve that particular aspect. With Claude Code, I'm able to solve that one up without coding. So I think there are plus sides as well. And of course, how do we train our kids and all? I still believe, the society will figure out. As you were giving an example of cars, I give more relatable example. I grew up in India, and I have seen, growing up in Delhi, I've seen there were a lot of protests when they said, we're going to computerize all the banks. And there were like a lot of protests out there by bankers and people like on the street coming up saying, oh, if you take away the job of a teller, how the world will look like. Today we know how the world looks like. You take out a UPI, press a button, and I think the finance as a sector has grown. So technology has always been helpful. And if I take a very unrelatable, very old example, there was a job in UK once upon a time called knocker up. There was a guy who used to come every morning at your house to knock and wake you up so that you can go to office or you go to your workplace. Now, if there was a pushback of, oh, let's not have these wristwatches or watches or clock, I think, the world would have been a way different. So I think technology is always beneficial, and society somehow finds its way out. Those are my thoughts.
I want to add one thing really brief, and it's that yes, some technology in some fields has like a minuscule shelf life, but not all technology, because the hammer, it's hardly changed from its original imaginings, for help. And so I find that fascinating, how the use of technology, and that's what I try and teach the students when it comes to like helping them enter this market, is find something that's useful. You might not know what it looks like yet or what tools you'll need to make it, but if it's useful, it'll last.
So it's like any other revolution. You always are unsure about the future. And the possibilities of today will actually keep him going. But then having to worry about this what, right? That not done.
I think it's
and that we should do it.
I think it's fantastic time to be alive,
Yes.
right?
So can I respond to that? So you're talking to a guy who left his big tech and doing AI. So I can't be pro AI because my entire life is to wake up and do AI. So I have no doubt in this, the goodness that this technology can bring. And just to counter argument and supporting you, I will counter myself saying, when combustion engine came, train came, I mean, labor market didn't go out. When DARPA, internet became, postman gone, but email created more jobs. I get that. The point that I'm trying to make over here is, I understand the goodness, I understand, but the key difference over here between all the analogy, whether it's trains to labor market, whether it's Pan Am on the long air flights, whether it's antibiotics, whether it's DARPA internet, whether it's iPhone, right? Across all these technologies, there has been a handover and handoff from an existing generation to a new generation. That is completely missing right now. The second point, to support my statement, there is also another research. We are all in different generations. So far, it's genetically proven that somebody who is next generation is genetically more intelligent than people before, as an average, right? It's for the first time in the entire, since we have started measuring human brain and intelligence, it's the first time that the next generation has seen a drop in analytical power for the first time ever, right? And the reason for that is because we are not giving enough of those training and skill set to this new generation as the previous generation has been building on. And the handoff that you're trying to give to 100% to machine over here, understand calculator to computer to email to all that, but what's missing over here is anyone who's 18-year-old to 22-year-old is going to be the most impacted age group right now, in the middle of it. These market corrections that we are talking about, these skill set upgrades that we are talking about, the disparity within the countries like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, all the way to Silicon Valley is so huge that my heart weeps for students who are 18 to 22-year-old who are not in developed countries right now. That's the gap that I'm trying to license. I'm not against AI. My entire life is on AI right now. But we are completely looking at those kids and they're like, That's what.
Maybe for another time.
Every generation has a challenge. Somebody rebuild the nation. Maybe this is our challenge.
No, but bear in mind that they have personal tutors as well, right? I think if you want to learn something, you are now in the best situation of all the past decade, right? Like you want to learn. We just maybe need to rethink education.
Yes,
yeah.
That was my point.
And it's free, right? If you want to learn, and as you were saying, right, it cannot be a better time to live than now. If you want to learn something, that is free.
Yeah.
And then with AI, it's catered for you. But one thing, again, really for another time, I think the society is changing from, because the entire, let's say, economic model, societal model, the value system was based on how. How do you solve that problem, right? whether it's a software programmer or a genetic engineer or, like what AlphaFold did to the protein folding thing, right? The entire ecosystem was based on how. Then it moved to what. That's where we are in right now. You need to just think what, and then like AlphaFold. Let's not just talk about the generative model for code, right? In AlphaFold, you just say what, and it gives you the how the amino acid falls into that, right? I think, and there will be a bit of turmoil, and again, this is my theory, where we are moving towards, where humanity should go. It's why. Because why is something that we humans need to think about. Maybe after Plato, Aristotle, and Heraclitus, no one thought of that why, right? Have we actually exhausted all the questions that we should ask? Probably not. There are a lot many mathematical conjectures which are getting solved by the math model. But we have not created new mathematical conjectures. That's the why thing, right? This is where probably we will be forced to look into, but there will be turmoil in between, right? But I think it's a positive thing. It's a good thing for humanity. Sorry, we were outright. But that's for really another.
Good. Thanks. So don't want to sort of talk much. It's just that today happens to be the 45th episode and the 4th season. But I think given the discussion that we had today, I think we kind of set a new bar in terms of what Tech Tuesday UK is all about. I really mean it. We had contradictions, we had sharing of knowledge, we sort of a huge amount of engagement, and that's what exactly we are all about. So thanks to all the audience, and of course thanks to the huge panel. We've got them. And of course, Megan. Now, I just want to share a small note. Megan has been part of Tech Tuesday for the last 2 seasons now. She's based out of Edinburgh. All this while she was joining us remotely. This is the first time she took the initiative, all on her own, coming down, staying a night out here, and joining here in person. She said, I need to be here in person. So, of course, big thanks to her as well. And a few things quickly before I wrap up. As I always mention, please stay back for your bites. Don't run away. The strike is happening only next week. I'm in TFL strike, so stay back. We'll take your bites, some of your bites. The next episode is happening again back here on the 5th of May. That's again on quantum and AI. So please come, please share this with your friends. We've got a good a number of good subjects coming up over the next couple of months. If you have followed the slide, you have known. And then the last week of June, which is 30th of June and 7th of July, we're doing a series with JLR at the Shard. The topic is AI and global automotive technology. And the 14th of July, if all goes well, we're hosting Tech Tuesday UK Live at the High Commission of India, London. So that's so much for now. So stay tuned, keep following us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Insta, we're pretty much all across there. And yes, last but not least, thanks to GSMA Innovation Foundry, thanks to these 2 gentlemen out here, Hamad and Faisal. Not just for hosting us, for being on the line always. They know how intensive and aggressive I am. Thank you. So have a great evening, enjoy your drinks. Thank you.